day 2 at ITB. If you're watching live, thanks for joining us. This is tnoozLIVE at ITB, presented by Travelaer. We're still standing mostly. This is Doug Lansky. You might be familiar with him, author and speaker. You've been here the whole time, right, as well?
Yeah.
You had a keynote yesterday?
In fact, I'm not still standing.
We're sitting. I know. I say these things.
It's all right. No, I had a keynote yesterday, and
you were standing for the keynote.
I was standing for that's
the
one
power
of the
pose.
Yes, as many. They got the JCPenney pose in there.
Right. It's good. Yeah, right.
Yeah, as many of those as possible.
So what was it about for those who weren't able to see it?
So it was called Rethinking the DMO, and we know that tourism is changing. We know that companies are supposed to change. So what are we not doing? What should we not be doing anymore, and what should they be doing instead? I mean, the classic example is we see the payphones have gone out, and we've got mobile phones instead. We've seen the video Blockbuster stuff go out of business, and we've seen Netflix take off. So we know that there's stuff that's going to get left behind in the wake, but that other better things will be taking over. So what's the DMO equivalent of those things? That was the big question, and I think...
Was there an answer, or was it still...
I proposed a solution.
Okay.
I mean, none of this is science. This is like proposing solutions. I look at it a little bit more like the whole organization needs to change, and really from the political or the ministerial level, because it's hard for these guys who are marketers to suddenly say we need to be protecting the environment or protecting the culture when it's not their mandate. They were marketing people brought in often from other marketing positions at other companies. How are they supposed to be now protecting an environment when it's not their mandate? They might even agree with it. In fact, most do. Most will say, yeah, we have some over-tourism here and there, or we have some parks that are getting a little trashy, or some beaches that are getting too crowded or too much litter. But what are we supposed to do? We're marketers. And they make a great point. So it really has to come from the level above. And if the level above were to reshape this into an ideal situation, I mean, you could say it would be a DMMO with marketing the other extra M, or you could even say DMMDO with development in there as well. So, and then the question is, when you see a lot of the development that's happening now, if you look at the most iconic stuff, swimming with whale sharks, these cool glass igloos in Finland where you look at the northern lights, the Indian rice boat conversions where you cruise the backwaters, all these things came out of the private sector. It was never a DMO that sat down and said, we're creating this. And then if you even look at the smaller stuff like calligraphy courses and cooking courses, that's also private, and that's also often being curated by Airbnb and the likes. So what's the DMO's role there in terms, I mean, are they supposed to be doing ale trails, or should you just wait for someone else to come and do it? What is their position? And then another interesting one, I asked the audience yesterday, I said, first I just said things to do in New York, and I showed the whole Google search, and I scrolled on like 4 pages, or 4 whole screens, and then I found the official New York site. And I said, and then I put it up on my screen. I said, if this was down for a month, would one fewer visitor go to New York? Would someone go, honey, the official website's down, I guess we're not going to New York? I would say, with big cities, not one fewer visitor would be there if the whole website crashed for a year.
So does that mean they should be kind of focusing more on making sure that their assets are used, or is it more just like letting them private sector do it and then just focus on marketing? Or are they, I guess it's almost sounds like they're not even focused that much on the marketing then if it's that low in the search.
I think you almost have to come up with a mission statement that encapsulates what you're supposed to do. And I think one of the big things is maybe it should be the DMO should do things that individual stakeholders can't do themselves to make the destination better for the long term. So there's a lot of stuff you can do short term. You could sell, a place on the sea could sell coral and seashells, hacking it off, but in the long term it's going to ruin it. You can sell off all the pieces of the wall of this treasure, and that's great for the first half year, and then what do you do?
It's like the Great Barrier Reef struggling so much. I mean, they're not cutting the coral out, but it's just still the same kind of thing.
That's actually not something, maybe that's more of a global,
manage it,
a global epidemic, the way that it's happening
impacts,
with the temperature rise. But I mean, I would say more like trash, things they can do locally.
Like
so
maybe like over tourism, that sort of thing.
Right. So like if you think of it more like even a magazine, if you've got the owner of the magazine, you've got editorial and you've got advertising. We've just got advertising. We kind of need editorial. And who is the advertising department to say who the editorial team should be? It needs to kind of come from above and say we need to have these different things. Yeah. And then on top of that, so what's the role? I actually was arguing the other day that one of the roles, in addition to figuring out how many people your destination can hold, which nobody knows, I asked the whole audience, there was like 400, 500 people in there. I said, does anyone know how many people your destination can hold in an optimal way? Not just how many hotel beds, but what's a good number for the whole destination? One person had checked that out of 500.
Did they say what that number was? Like, how is it? Was it a larger destination or?
It was actually a consultant looking into a place in, I think, in Ecuador, where they were just looking. It was a small village, and they were just looking into it. They didn't even have the number yet. So I mean, it's sort of like when Tim Cook says to the marketing department, how many iPhones do you think we can sell? And they say 100 million. Well, then he goes to production and goes, how many can we make? When the marketing department in a DMO says, we think we can try to market to this many with an increase of this, they need to then go and look at the destination and go, can we hold that many? What's happening is that, there's capacity at these little museums and these little attractions, but people don't really want to go to those. I mean, a few do, but you can't force them to go to the ones that aren't popular. If the most popular 1 or 2 or 3 attractions already has a line out the door in peak season, and they can't take any more, then what's the point in getting even 1% more visitors next year, which are likely to come mostly in peak season, which are going to even make that thing more crowded? So until you've resolved that bottleneck, and I think I was saying that a better word for over-tourism, I think, is unbalance.
I like that, yeah.
Because really you've got hotels, airlines, cruise ships, tour companies bringing in as many people as they can to make money. But then you've got the things they actually came to see and do. You've got the museums, the attractions, the beaches, the old historical towns, and they can only handle a certain number of people. And these two numbers are vastly different. It's out of balance. So what's got to happen is like the tail has been wagging the dog. People aren't going to Barcelona because they're like, I want to sit on an airplane, or I'd really like to hang out in a hotel room. They're going there to see the stuff that Barcelona has to offer. That's if you can start to sort of have time-ticketed entry at all these attractions and then show online when they fill up. So you go to Expedia, you're looking at your flight, you're looking at your hotel, and you're like, oh, 9 out of 10 of the main attractions in Barcelona are completely filled on those dates. I guess I'll book another date or book earlier next year. People often talk about these peaks and valleys. They just want it to come up to the peaks. But it's got to go like that. There's got to be these peak periods where they say, we're full. Like a good restaurant says, we're full, you can book next Friday.
Yeah, because you break it otherwise. Yeah, otherwise, I'm actually used to own restaurants. So, you break it. If you accept too much, then the whole thing goes down and everyone's experience plummets, right?
Exactly.
And then people also quit. So it's like, in that analogy, it also means that some of these tour operators may be like, I can't do this anymore. I'm out because it's just too stressful.
And that bottleneck is different. It could be parking spaces for cars. It could be parking for tour buses. It could be, what's the first thing that fills up in a destination? And a destination needs to kind of figure out how many they can hold, look at that first bottleneck, fix it, move on to the next bottleneck, fix it, and that's how you can increase capacity and have a real close eye. I was talking to a guy from Disney. I said, what would be the ideal chart for a destination to have in destination management tool that Disney would have? And so I created a fictitious one where I showed these kind of bar graphs where it even had like toilets, restaurants, hotels, airline capacity, tour bus capacity, and it showed where the level's at and then what the capacity's at. And so you can see where you are in capacity for all those things, and you can have like a destination management kind of a real-time look. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
And you can go, we need more toilets, we need more restaurants.
Especially sometimes you're just like, even around here, sometimes there's like lines and you think you would know kind of that flow, and it's pretty easy to track these days, especially you can get sensors and IoT and all that. So
well, there's a crazy thing that happens with toilets. So first of all, people walk around. If you ever had to, been in a big city walking around and you have to go or your kids have to go, you're in kind of a panic situation and you're not enjoying it. You're not going to stop and shop and eat and do other stuff. And what people often will do is they'll go back to their hotel room. Then the kids start playing video games, the people turn on the phone, they take a nap, and now they're out of the consumer loop. So what if toilets were actually a way to get people to shop and enjoy more?
Or, Europe here, they have actual public toilets, which, in America is almost sacrilegious, that the fact that you would give a toilet to, some homeless person to use or something is bizarre.
Now, you wouldn't want to use a lot of those.
No, but if you need to, it's better than either holding it or going somewhere randomly in the street or something.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then there's been a lot of talk here. They showed these guys showing robots doing backflips and Hyperloop and driverless cars. Personally, in terms of tourism, that doesn't do much for me. I mean, that's just kind of fun, futuristic, bells and whistles. And the organizer of the speaking events here, a German professor, asked me to, can you provide a vision for the future of tourism 5, maybe 10 years out? And so that was my challenge. I made a 2-minute film. My 13-year-old daughter filmed me, and I pretended that I landed in Stockholm, spent 2 days in the city, and I showed a seamless experience. There were no real words in the film. I just showed a little text. But what I did was, so I landed, and none of this actually worked, so I just pretended that it worked. I showed, like, I pretended I had a barcode ticket, showed it to the high-speed train on the way in from the airport. Then when I got to my hotel, they gave me a little RFID or an NFC bracelet, and they gave me a room key card. And they said, which do you want? And I'm like, oh, I'll take both. And so I have an app. I just took the barcode, I scanned it, so I connected the phone, I connected the bracelet and the key to my phone. So now my room key, which I either bracelet or card, opens my room, and then I went and I tapped on it. I went into the subway, tapped and went into the bus, tapped and opened a little cell phone charging locker, tapped and put my backpack in a major locker in the train station, tapped and went into a toilet. I then booked a special time to go to a museum on my phone, but then tapped and went in with my bracelet to a museum. I booked a car for ride sharing in the city, tapped on my bracelet on the car door, and I could use the car for a certain amount of time.
So then if your phone is dead, that's also really helpful because after you're around all day, that's another issue.
Exactly, especially when kids are involved and your phone's there, you're busy.
Or they take it all the time, like, give me your phone. You're like, stop it.
Totally. Or they drop it or it breaks or the battery or the whatever.
Or you're only on Wi-Fi because you don't want to pay for a local network connection.
Exactly. So there's that side of things. It's nice to have the bracelet. The other thing that was interesting, my daughter went to a soccer cup this summer, and it's the world's biggest one. It's in Gothenburg, Sweden. And they gave these little rubberized bands that had a barcode on them. It didn't have any NFC, but it was branded with the soccer match cup thing. And she wore it for 2 months afterward. It was amazing branding. When these kids loved their bracelets, they thought it was so much fun. It's like a magic band for a city. Yeah. It's Vail's epic past extended into the city, but I'm
sure Disney would like to hear that. That's but it works. I mean, look how much business it drove for them. Yeah.
And it's like it makes it a frictionless experience. It eliminates that interface that Apple's always trying to do between their phone. You just sort of, and it's not like people go to a city because they want to fiddle with the machines to buy a subway pass. That part they just want to work. They want to get on with their cooking course and their, whatever things they're doing in the city, visiting museums. They don't want to be standing in lines and fiddling with a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
You could say that it's making it a Disneyfication of the experience, but I would say it's actually taking the best part of Disney and applying it to the city that also is going to increase the visitor experience and even visitor spending.
I like this slogan already, Magic Kingdom for everyone. It's like this idea of like getting out there, but that's their whole business model.
Look, Disney
Seamless everything.
Yeah, well, Disney spent $1 billion on that.
Yeah.
A city could do it for I'm not going to give them a price tag. Well, let's just say it costs $1 million, $2 million. They could roll out something that, and you can see the return on investment. Yep. And if a DMO, the thing is, Airbnb's probably, I've heard they've already been eyeing stuff like this. Other companies as well. If the DMO waits for a company to come and do it, that company is going to decide how many cell phone chargers, how many chairs, massage chairs, and these other things that affect the visitor experience. And in the same way that first Airbnb came in and Uber came in and the destination went chasing after and kind of was like, no, please give us some tax money and please do this and please do work with us.
Or spending money on lawyers, which is expensive.
It would have been better, I'm sure, if they could have rewound the clock to have gotten in bed with them early on and worked together.
Or just, instead of spending money on lawyers, spend on the infrastructure, which actually matters. And then the lawyers are the only people who win in any of these things.
Always.
It's just like a bunch of conflict and,
Right. So, I mean, in the same way it's good for a city to, control their electricity, control their water. I mean, there's private subcontractors within this. And having a healthcare system maybe and a military, and there's other things that could be good for the government to have. I would say building this tourism digital infrastructure and having essentially all the inventory where every attraction is on the same booking system. And then they all have contracts for 3 to 10 years, let's say. And they would go into the top ones anyway and say, what's it going to cost to buy us out, to buy you out of that contract and put you on a better system, but that one that we all have. And then you combine that same system with the same thing that has massage chairs, leg chair, this, that, everything else. And the DMO is in an ideal position to do it. It's not going to be crazy expensive. They'll have a new revenue stream. It'll connect the city. And imagine the data they get. Imagine the cool things they can do. Like you can get a push notification saying, hey, 30% off on this museum and you're only 300 yards away.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
There's all sorts of stuff you can do if you're on the same system that you can't do if you're trying to integrate. I mean, you'd integrate in the short term to get it going, but in the long-term vision is that you would have like Disney, like Epic Pass in Vail, you'd have the whole city on one platform.
It's quite the vision. It really is.
I'm not saying it's
and
going to
locals would love it too.
The locals could use it. It wouldn't be cool if you use that system, you got points for using it, and then when you went to another city, you could kind of use your points to get.
Yeah.
And you can have different level passes. One pass lets you use cars, the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways this could play out. But it's just one vision of how a future could look for the DMO.
This is great. We're gonna wrap it up at that. That's so like kind of blowing my mind actually a little bit, because when you think about destinations controlling some of that stuff, it would change the narrative a lot.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Pleasure.
it. This is tnoozLIVE from ITB, presented by Travelaer. We'll be right back.